Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Rhyme of the Times for the week ending the 6th of July 2024. Election 2024 and the Tory government is no more as Labour runs up a massive score to walk through the number 10 door, although turnout is extremely poor. First past the post leaves many feeling sore and wanting a change for sure. But as it stands, Britain has a Labour government for 5 years or more. The last 4 days of electioneering, as Thursday's decision day was nearing, had campaigners reaching fever pitch pace, geographically and mentally all over the place. On Sunday evening, Farage didn't dilly-dally. After a bad week, he was determined to rally. In Birmingham, with the glamour and glitz of Trump, he seemed to have gotten over his recent grump. Coming out punching, he was back off the ropes, fulfilling the punters' vision and hopes. Reform were back in the game with teeth bared, and Conservatives appeared pretty scared. With the writing having been for some time on the wall, probably since Boris's inglorious fall, Tories have clung on, but their rallying call has been increasingly unheard by one and all. Now all that was left for was a desperate last plea to Reform supporters to face reality and hold their nose and vote Tory, not Reform, to stop Starmer's tanks parking on Westminster's lawn. Many feel a key moment in this whole election was Nigel Farage's intervention. Able to grab so much instant attention, he gave the political right 2 dimensions, and therefore, by logical extension, created so much Tory internal tension. Whether this was always Farage's intention remains a bone of significant contention. But Sunak was determined to fight to the end, and on Wednesday turned to Boris, his erstwhile friend. In a shock move, he brought back Tory's vote-winning goat. Johnson gave it full throttle, had the crowd by the throat. A little last gasp nostalgia might just do the trick. But COVID memories just made many feel sick, and their verdict on this government remained emphatic. Conservative was not many people's first pick. And Tory reasons to be cheerful made pretty slim pickings. For opponents their ruin brought much finger-licking. 2 Reform candidates jumped ship to Tory, but there was barely a ripple of fuss or furore. Much too little too late to change the story, and post-election that story has turned quite gory, with bloodletting and recriminations on how Conservatives should have governed the nation. So while Ritchie, of course, did the honourable thing, criticism flew in from the left and right wing. There's no doubt the Conservatives have been badly stung. It's a long climb back, and they haven't reached the first rung. With many hands to be wrung and mud to be slung, a new hymn sheet needed from which fresh hymns can be sung. But in such a broad church that's easier said than done. In the end, there is no way of pleasing everyone. At the end of this tumultuous week for our nation, skewed electoral outcomes caused much consternation. The prevailing thought in many minds that sticks is the apparent unfairness of British politics. First past the post, throwing up some statistics showing results don't reflect the ballot box ticks, and a clamour to have the system fixed. But it is what it is, and it's done the trick for Labour, who are now in a position of effectively governing with no opposition. 34% of the vote doesn't sound large, but it's enough to put Labour in complete charge, because it translates to 412 MPs, leaving democracy sitting in a state of unease. Because can a system really be fair with no correlation between seats and vote share. For example, Labour's majority of 2/3 came from a vote share of 1/3. That's absurd. While 14% of voters marked reform as their choice, but with just 5 MPs they'll hardly have a voice. Although Farage will be heard, we can be sure of that. He's already said first past the post must be scrapped. In the past it was Lib Dems who were making that call for an end to our politics of winner takes all, but right now the system suits them just fine, winning a massive 72 seats this time. That's 67 more seats than Reform UK, but from 500,000 fewer votes. What can you say? And Starmer, as long as he keeps his party in check, essentially has 5 years' worth of blank cheques, and yet the apathy of the voting public has meant just 1 in 5 actively chose this government. So, as it turned out, with the turnout so low, the people's true will we will still never know. Starmer's first press conference on Saturday at 1, just after his first cabinet meeting was done, gave an indication that the huge task had begun and the pre-election spin was now being unspun, so that the country could start to feel the faint sun that Sir Keir mentioned just after victory was won. The conference was conducted in a business-like manner, describing what was already on the wall planner. No bells and whistles, no loud boasts or banners, but for Labour supporters, happy hosannas. The Rwanda small boats plan was immediately sunk and other Tory wheezes thrown in the junk. Questions were answered with no fanfare or fuss, music to many ears after 14 years plus of chaos from the likes of Johnson and Truss, but much of the country will still cavil and cuss. Free world democracy was ever thus.